AI is really good at turning signals into patterns rather than looking at individual clicks and just reporting data. AI's value is in interpretation rather than in prediction. So it can't tell you exactly that something's going to become a customer, but it can interpret, help you make decisions about it. Hello and welcome to the Health Tech Marketing Show. I'm your host, Adam Chirinas. Thank you to you for listening. I hope you're a regular subscriber. And if you're not, easy enough to subscribe on whatever your favorite podcast app is, or you can find us on YouTube. Just look for the Health Tech Marketing Show. Big thank you to our wonderful sponsors, the people at Healthcare Now Radio, which is the 24/7 healthcare radio station online, and also a podcast syndication network that we've been part of now for about 5 or 6 months. And it's done wonders to our reach. We're reaching many more people thanks to the work from the folks at Healthcare Now Radio. We're really grateful to you for that. Today's episode is the second in the series about how to use AI to grow your pipeline. I don't know if you listened to the previous episode. The basic premise of what we're trying to do here is to help marketers like you think through how to solve one of the big unsolved problems with AI, which is how do we use it to grow top line revenue? We're all using it for content creation and for research, and it's incredibly powerful in that regard. But very few companies have made progress, let alone crack the code on how you can actually make a meaningful contribution and a measurable contribution to pipeline using AI. And so we are trying to help you take a step in the right direction with that. This is not a simple thing. As you may recall from the past episode, using it for research and using it for content is pretty simple, right? There's a relatively few number of use cases. You're using it to grow your pipeline is a big strategic step, and there's a lot involved with it. So what we're trying to do is to break it down. And for convenience sake, we break this down into 4 pillars. So the pillars are signal intelligence, orchestration, execution and acceleration, and then governance and learning. And today's episode is about signal intelligence. And so let me explain what signal intelligence is not first. So signal intelligence is not lead scoring. It's not, things like the threshold of an MQL. It's not measuring like a single intent spike. What signal intelligence is the ability to detect meaningful buyer behavior earlier. And we do that by interpreting patterns, not just discrete events. And we can also, if we're doing it well, we're doing it across accounts, we're doing it across people, and we're doing that over time. So it's a longitudinal thing. And I'm going to break this into 3 different layers. So 3 different areas of signal intelligence. So let me tell you what those are first. So number 1 is buyer intent signals. Second is account and buying committee behavior. And then the third is engagement patterns over time. Buyer intent signals is being able to see anonymous patterns. So you might, hopefully you can identify the account. Otherwise, there's not much value. It's very rare that you can identify individuals. There are tools out there for doing that, things like Vector and RB2B and Get Squid and Virtual Visitor as well. So those are good little tools that you can drop a bit of code on your website and you can identify some of the individuals who are hitting the website. That's pretty cool. The downside is that it really only gives you a partial view. And the other thing is I think a lot of people wonder, well, what do I do next? I've identified that Joe Smith from Big Healthcare has hit the website. Do I reach out to them? Probably not. The second is account and buying committee behavior. So this is where a lot of teams struggle. So you can see, if it's working well, you see multiple peoples engaging at different times. But you also might see things like, for example, the champion who'd been really engaged suddenly is ghosting you. He's ghosting you in email, he's ghosting you by phone, and he's not coming to the website anymore. So something's going on there. And then the other thing is you might see new stakeholders appearing late. Now, platforms like Demandbase and Sixth Sense already have been doing that for quite a while, actually, and use AI to do that. A wonderful episode of this show with Kelly McDermott from Caregility, where she broke down basically the story of a deal and how they could see individuals and sort of individual clusters of people from a particularly large account hitting their website over the period of about 9 months. And so you could really tell that later on in the deal that they were in a very good place, because suddenly there are a ton of different people and different roles hitting the website. And so they kind of knew that at that point that they were pretty much in the catbird seat with that particular deal. The third area is engagement patterns over time. And so this is like seeing things like, for example, deals maybe stalling or maybe accelerating, like maybe it was stalled for a while and suddenly it takes off again. So being able to pick up those particular signals. We actually use, in the work that we do, we use a tool called Factors AI. So Factors AI is a really nice aggregation tool that allows you to view accounts, set your own scoring parameters, aggregate signals from all kinds of different sources. It might be Bombora, third-party intent data. It may be first-party hitting your website. It might be LinkedIn advertising or programmatic advertising responses, opening up emails, all of those kinds of things, and then aggregating that. But the cool thing is that because we're looking at that over time, you can actually sort of tell, hey, you know what, this deal went quiet. It suddenly seemed to be lightening up again. So this is a positive signal. The other thing you might see is maybe a shift in topic interest if you're using Bombora third-party intent data. And as I mentioned before, you might also see a change in the types of people who are hitting the website, which is clearly a really interesting signal, right? If you know that suddenly the CFO or people from the finance team or people from procurement are hitting the website, that's a really good sign, right? The reason why I'm doing this series is that, and why I think this particular episode is so important for healthcare, is because of the anomalously long sales cycle that we have in this industry. So according to HIMSS, the average sales cycle is 13 months. And as we know, quite often that means it's 18 or 24 months long. And there are so many different stakeholders involved. You might have 5 stakeholders, towards the end, you may have 20 stakeholders involved. And that might include procurement and IT and finance and all of the different clinical departments. The other reason is that there's a very strong incumbent bias and sort of favorite brands, particularly in our industry. And what happens is that buyers start a buying process with a short list of vendors, may potentially have a favorite in mind. And so for that reason, it is so important to be able to pick up on signals, buying signals as early as possible in the process. And I'm actually going to tell you about a little application that you may not have heard of that could help you possibly do that on LinkedIn. So you're probably familiar with Bombora, which again is very heavily uses AI, but this other tool is maybe something new to you. Anyway, so again, the most important thing here is that you get to see the signals before they issue an RFP, because as we well know, right, if you're getting an RFP and you didn't know it was coming, that may be bad news because it probably means you're making up the numbers. Because if it wasn't clear to you that you were in the running before you got the RFP, you are probably not their number one choice. I want to kind of break down some of the different use cases of AI when it comes to signal intent. So the first one, as I described with Factors AI, is about aggregation. So we use it for aggregating web behavior, content engagement. You can pull in data from the CRM or email opens, things like that. We haven't done this, but you could probably aggregate. You could bring in sales calls and interactions at trade shows. And we could also pull in third-party intent signals. It would be great if we could also pull in social engagement. We can't currently do that with this tool. But that's one of the really, really good things that AI can help you do, is pull all of this together and help you identify the patterns of what's going on. And that's the second one, which is pattern recognition. So AI doesn't care about individual clicks. What AI gets excited about and tells you about are sequences and different combinations of activities that are going on, and particularly things like deviations from historical norms. So let's say, for example, that you could use AI to take some of your won deals and get it to analyze the account's behavior historically in the 18 months from first interaction to closing a deal. And if you do that for a whole bunch of accounts, you may start to see some patterns that are new to you, that are signals of positive signals towards you, or maybe signals that they're stalling, particularly if you compare it. Maybe you do the same analysis on deals that got lost as well. The third thing is weak signal interpretation. So many early signals are ambiguous. So for example, if you're using third-party intent data in isolation, quite often you're thinking, well, I don't really know what to do with this. If I'm seeing a buying signal from a client, from an account rather, does this mean that they're in market, or does this mean they're getting educated? Or does this mean that maybe they've hired a bunch of students who've got it as a internal, their summer intern project? Who knows, right? It's like, it can mean a lot of different things. But where AI can help is it can turn this is interesting into this looks similar to past buying behavior. And that can help you sort of say, actually, this account may genuinely be in market, and very actively so. And then the last use case I want to talk about here is about learning from outcomes. So the real power here comes from when signals are tied to pipeline outcomes, and you've developed a system that can learn which signals actually matter, and so that you start your basically your GTM habits are designed around looking for those signals and responding to them appropriately. So let me dive into the example I teased you with a bit earlier on. So this is a company called Tiga AI, Tiga.ai. And the marvelous Nick Panay, who is the CMO from Inovalon, who was on the show last year. We spent an hour and a change talking about all the amazing ways that they're using AI in their marketing group. And he was the one who told me about Tiga AI. And the way Tiga works is that basically it plugs into LinkedIn, and based on what you tell them you're interested in, it looks at social engagement behavior, and it's looking for signals that are relevant to you across accounts that are relevant to you. So maybe there's some signals that are related to switching vendors. Maybe they're signals related to regulatory shifts. Maybe there's signals where an account you're interested in is signaling that they've got some pretty serious operational issues, some pretty serious operational pain. And the signals that it's looking at is when individuals are commenting, liking, saving, or sharing posts, not filling out forms per se, but that kind of social signal that may be an indication of something. And bear in mind that the thing which is so great about LinkedIn is it's where we as business people are comfortable. And it's certainly the way that Inovalon is using it is for things like signal detection, in particular with sort of companies that they're engaged with, to look at some of the behavior of what is the behavior that they're manifesting online, and what can that tell the salespeople about whether an account is waking up, or is there maybe a change that they're interested in? Like an obvious one would be suddenly there are a bunch of people from an account that you're working with who is showing a lot of interest in your competitors. That's clearly not a great signal. But equally, it's like if they're showing a lot of interest in the competitors and then suddenly they're not showing interest in the competitors, showing interest in you, equally, that's a really, really good signal, right? I want to talk about the kind of usual suspects when it comes to signal and intelligence and the way that they use AI. And so that's, Sixth Sense, Demandbase, Bombora, ZoomInfo. These are the companies that, have great sources of third-party intent signals, and in some of the cases are also really good at helping you aggregate signals from lots of different sources. Sixth Sense, for example, analyzes thousands of signals, and many of these are invisible to you as marketers. So it can identify sort of anonymous research behavior. It can look at things like topic consumption across the web. So, where accounts seem to be showing particular interest in a topic that's related to what you do. Maybe there are technographic changes that are going on. It can look at things like hiring patterns, which is like a signal of something going on there, right? And then you can also look at things like which brands, which companies are they researching? And where AI plays a role here is in inferring buying stage based on all of these different signals and the patterns that they're looking at. And it can help you prioritize the accounts. And then last but not least, surface who might be in market before they put their hand up. That's what this stuff is really, really good for. So the key point here is that it's very good. These systems are very good at detecting intent at scale. Now, the companies I mentioned are the ones that are sort of best known for it. And I think that a lot of people have been frustrated with, the sort of the big marketing automation platforms like HubSpot being a bit behind the eight ball on this. They're catching up and they're using AI to catch up. So HubSpot is, I think, a great example of that. They've got they've got co-pilots, they've got agents. They also have this system called Breeze, and Breeze is their intelligence system. And that includes buyer intent. And so you can now, if you're a HubSpot customer, you can use HubSpot to see buyer intent at the company level. So which companies are showing increased activity, which pages and topics matter most to them. And because if you're automating everything within HubSpot, you can then instantly trigger workflows, adjust routings, prioritize follow-up, that kind of stuff. And those are the sorts of things that in the past, you might have had to go consider demand-based to do this. Now with HubSpot, I don't think what they're doing is on the level of what demand-based does, but it might get you some of the way there. So before you make that investment in time and money in a platform like Sixth Sense or demand-based. What's fundamentally interesting about that, to me anyway, is that it changes one of the main benefits of HubSpot being about creating interesting, great dashboards that provide interesting insight to changing how we respond and doing that automatically and doing that at scale. Last area I want to cover related to AI is one of the most obvious potential AI applications that you may not have considered using when it comes to pipeline growth. And that's ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude. So if you're smart about it and you're resourceful in the types of things that you look at and you spend the time to develop really good prompts, you can use generative AI to help you analyze patterns and to improve the way that you identify opportunities early and what responses work when. Let me explain. I'll give you an example. You could, if your company will let you do it, and that is a big if, right? Because some companies are just basically have got this thing shut down so that you can really only use Copilot and you can't do a lot of what I'm going to tell you about. But if your company is a little bit more relaxed about it, you could do things like take weekly account summaries, sales call notes, intent data exports out of Bombora, and then other types of engagement trends that you might have across your CRM and other data. And then you ask ChatGPT, what's changing? What looks like early buying behavior? What accounts deserve attention now? And so, it means you've got to have really rich prompts. And I do this a lot with ChatGPT. I mean, I use ChatGPT as a strategic co-pilot, and I will have a conversation with it. I use a tool called Whisperflow, so that rather than typing, which I'm pretty crap at, I can actually talk to it. And I use a framework called CRIT, which is context. So what's the context? R is the role. I is interview. So ask me questions. And T is the task. So in this case, an example would be, I have a whole bunch of data about accounts that might be in market for I'll make it up, our telehealth, our virtual care offering. And I pulled some data out of Bombora. I've also pulled our results from a LinkedIn campaign that we've been running for the last 3 months, and an email campaign that's been going with that, and also downloaded a whole bunch of leads that we picked up at a trade show. So that's the context. The role is, I want you to be an absolutely brilliant marketing analyst. And the task is, I want you to identify which accounts seem to be showing buying behavior. And the I interview is, before you get started, I want you to ask me 6 questions to make sure I believe that you understand the task and that I can answer your questions about the data that I provided you. So that's an example of how you could use ChatGPT to help you with these kinds of things. And so, this can say, here's some of the things it might be able to do. It might be able to help you sort of take a weak signal and say, this is what these 5 small buying behaviors together look meaningful. And so this account seems to be a market because X, Y, and Z are happening. You might not have spotted that if you look at the data on your own. It also helps you from a longitudinal perspective. So AI can help you answer things like, what usually happens 30 to 60 days before a lead account becomes an opportunity. It also can help you identify what patterns precede a deal stalling or getting lost, so that you can see that coming sooner. And maybe you have to adjust the probability that you have it in your CRM. It can also challenge you in the way that you're analyzing your data. So which signals are you overweighting? And then which ones correlate poorly with outcomes? So that's something that you would probably want to do on an annual basis or quarterly basis to say, are we looking at this data the right way? So this is not about letting AI decide for you. It's about getting AI to inform you earlier and to help you make better decisions. Well, let me just bring this to a close with some takeaways for you. So here are the things that I want you to take away from this episode. So number 1, particularly in healthcare, early beats perfect. The sooner you know with the greatest confidence that you can that an account might be in market, the better your odds are of turning that account into a customer. Second is, AI is really good at turning signals into patterns rather than looking at individual clicks and just reporting data. AI's value is in interpretation rather than in prediction. So it can't tell you exactly that something's going to become a customer, but it can help you make decisions about it. Obviously, you could go out and get Sixth Sense, and that is a really good way to improve the way that you measure signals. But you don't necessarily need these tools to start. You can do a lot with things like ChatGPT if you're resourceful and smart about how you use those tools. Obviously, your company needs to let you do that. And then last but not least, and if you take away one thing from this episode, it's that signal intelligence only matter if it feeds the decisions. So what are you doing with the information that you're getting out of AI. Now, next week's episode is not an AI episode. The week after that will be the next one in the series. And so the third episode in this AI and pipeline generation series is about orchestration. So what happens after you see the signal? And we're going to talk about prioritization, routing, personalization at scale, and then choosing the right response, not just responding faster. So I hope you're finding this useful. I'm really enjoying doing it. And I got to tell you, this whole process of thinking this through, because it's a big complex issue, is really helping me think about the ways that we can help our clients get more value out of AI. Now, if you've found this useful, can I ask you two things? Number one, give it a rating, give it a positive thumbs up, give it a 5-star rating if you would. That'd make a big difference to me. I really would appreciate it. The second thing is, if you know somebody, a peer or one of your colleagues who would find this useful, please forward the episode to them. I really appreciate it if you would do that. By the way, if you want to have a chat with me about this, again, we're figuring out a lot of this stuff. I think if anybody tells you they've got it all cracked and they're absolute experts in AI pipeline generation, they're probably lying. I think everybody's trying to figure this stuff out. But if you want to have a chat about this, there's a link to book a meeting with me down below. And I've tried to provide links to all of the companies that we've mentioned in this episode. And with that, thank you for listening and see you on the next show.